Welcome to Garden Grounds. We'll get started in 30 seconds. If you have a question, please throw it out there. Any question related to vegetable gardening. This is what Garden Grounds is all about. I answer questions live. Just type in questions so I can pull it out of the chat and drop your garden questions. Today's light subject is last-minute compost bins. But this series is really for people to ask questions about vegetable gardening and hopefully get a decent answer. Just setting up the chat here. So Garden Grounds is every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. This is going to be the only one for December because the fourth Thursday is going to fall on a holiday, so I won't be here. And starting in January, back to the regular schedule, every second and fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. All right, and you'll see some people with circles and stars next to their name. They are perk members. If you want to join perk memberships, check out any video descriptions. There's links in there. And I do this type of format 5 times a month. It's a much smaller group. The topics are a little bit more extensive, and I just answer questions and we talk about vegetable gardening. So David, new perk member, if I cut my grass and leaves and put them in garden beds, I'm concerned it'll introduce crabgrass and other weeds. It's a possibility, but the benefit of composting and mulching over your beds outweighs the need to weed. The thing that you keep in mind is that you can only have weed seeds and crabgrass seeds if you're cutting the grass when they have fully mature seed pods on there. So if you're cutting grass and it doesn't have seeds on there, or if you're cutting the weeds before the weeds produce flowers, produce seed pods, then you're not really introducing anything. The other thing that happens too is that if you consistently mulch, even if some grass or some weed seeds start to grow, the next layer of mulch often kind of, just kills off that, anything that's germinating gets killed off. Let me just check too, because I started answering the questions and I always like just to make sure people can hear me and see me. So let me just get a check on that to make sure things are going smoothly, and then I'll continue on. And I'm just checking my end. Sometimes I forget to do all the double checks and then I'm talking and I'm not actually live, but it looks like things are going right here. Let me get back to where I was. Fixing up the chat. All right, so next question from John. Having an epic problem. There's been potted grapes like small trees in my big box stores. I'm in a cold climate. Can they stay in pots or be planted in the ground? Had zero luck with info on this type. Let me just think about the question a second. As long as the winters are fine. Blueberries, grapevines, they can take cold temperatures, different fruit trees. As long as the fruit trees are rated to grow in the ground in your area, you could leave them in pots. There is a greater chance that the freeze is going to come through the pots and possibly cause damage, but the plants do go dormant. You can plant them now. 6 years ago when I moved to this property, I brought blueberry bushes from my other home, and it was middle of January. So I dug them up probably in November or December, getting ready for the move. They just sat in green bags, trash bags. And then I planted them into the ground in January. Plants did perfectly fine. So you could go ahead and plant those up. That's what I would recommend. As long as your ground's not frozen solid, get them in the ground, but they will be okay. All right, next question. And if I miss your question, please throw it out there. Once we get into like 10 minutes into this into this live, the chat really starts moving and it's hard for me to sometimes pick out the questions. Eagle, When germinating rosemary indoors, how do you keep the top layer of soil moist for seeds that take 30 days to germinate? Happy first Christmas as a grandfather. Thank you. It is first Christmas as a grandfather. My daughter had a baby boy, Austin. She's actually coming down, and we're going to the aquarium in December. Well, it's December now, but we're actually, is it this Monday? 2 Mondays from now. And I'm really excited for Christmas, although he can't really appreciate it yet. He's only going to be 5 months old. I'm really excited. He's going to be actually learning how to garden. We'll be doing some videos with him, and I'm going to create a space for him. So it's great. So first grandchild, looking forward to more. Here's the thing with germinating seeds. Anytime a seed germinates, and think about it, it could rain outside, and then it doesn't rain for 10 days, and you have baking sun coming down. When a seed germinates, it sends the roots down first. It sends down a deep root to go and collect water and moisture. So it's going down to the bottom of your cell. You don't really have to spray the surface of your soil when you're starting seeds indoors. In fact, I recommend between waterings is you let that top of the seed starting mix dry to a light brown. That's how you know moisture is drying, it's leaving. But below that, there's plenty of moisture. You don't want to keep your seeds overly saturated in a starting mix inside because they can get root rot and other problems. You want them to actually dry out. But the top always dries first. There's plenty of moisture underneath of that. So I wouldn't worry about it, to answer your question, directly. When that top dries to a light brown, just bottom water, let it saturate back up, get dark, let it do its thing again. Keeping the soil moist on the surface isn't going to impact your rosemary or your lavender or any seed really. Maybe like super fine seeds, maybe, but they've been doing this for billions of years. And it is possible that when the seeds are ready to germinate, like I was saying, outdoors, they're hit with 10, 14 days of no rain or something. But if they germinate, the roots go down into the soil and they're pulling moisture up. That's what they're designed for. Question. Elaine, Perk member. I'm in 7A and I believe you mentioned starting potatoes now. Please explain. I wouldn't start potatoes now, but I do have, when I have leftover potatoes in my potato bags or whatever, I will put potatoes deeper into those bags and I just let them go. But it's not really the time to start potatoes. They can freeze. If a potato freezes in the ground, it usually gets mushy. It can be problems. But every year, some of them survive. They come up, and they're not really the first potatoes because you're not really gaining anything. So, however I said that before, you heard me talk about it, it's not time to plant potatoes. You can put them into the bags early in March 1st. That's just as good. You don't have to worry about, the freeze of January and February. So really plant your potatoes in March. But if you want to experiment, you can put some into the center of your containers. As long as that container doesn't freeze solidly all the way through, the potatoes usually survive. Is there a homemade spray for fruit trees to warn off bugs that tend to kill fruits and attack leaves? And the answer really is no. There's nothing that you can make that is going to stop insects from damaging tree fruit. You can, use neem oil. You can use vegetable oil. You can do oil coats, on the trees. That's, you can buy horticultural oil. That's used to spray on the trees when they don't have any leaves, suffocates any eggs or anything that's on there. But I just want to be clear, there's not a specific spray that's going to take care of, things that get into the fruit and cause damage. You usually have to go to the stronger chemical type sprays. Be it organic or chemical, it's not one spray. It's a routine that you have to establish for your area. So it might be dormant oils at some point, and then it's something again when insects are coming out. You also want to identify what disease or insect is affecting your trees and find out what you want to spray. I have found that I have to use chemical sprays on my fruit trees not when the fruit's present, but to really manage the issues that come. It's just the fruit trees can get lots of diseases, and if you have a bunch together, they spread really quickly, so you really have to stay on top of it. I have not perfected it yet. I can manage certain trees. Mine are spread out. One group of peach trees do really well. Another group of nectarines and peach trees get impacted by problems all the time. I'm getting it better under control, but I'm still kind of learning, what to use. So you're going to need an antifungal. You're going to need something for insects. But before you select and choose them, you really want to identify what the problem is when it shows up in your garden, and you want to have a spray routine down for your fruit trees. I wish there was an easier answer. The thing too, I think about, when you're looking for something that, and you're not saying that you're looking for a cure-all, but when you're looking for something that like totally controls X or Y, or an organic solution that does A, B, and C, even the chemical types, if there was something so magnificent that it did everything and that we could make it, we would all know of it by now. It is really not, and that's going to be subjects of future garden grounds that I do 11 o'clock every second and fourth Thursday, what we're doing now. It's the routine. It's the spraying routine of the gardener, independent of the products they pick, that really impact how well their plants do. So that's really more important. And I'm staying on this a little bit longer because this is really important. Learning when the insect shows up, the disease shows up, and preventively spraying with anything, organic or not, 2 weeks before and then regularly is what's going to make a big difference. Cheryl's also a new perk member. Any suggestions to prevent thistle from invading compost piles? I have moved one but have limited locations because the farm behind my fence has a 20-foot zone. It's not maintained, thanks. So thistle, weeds that grow underground and send out, and I'm not sure exactly thistle grows this way, but the idea is right. They send out a lot of lateral roots. If you pick the thistle, it sends out more roots. And you can't really control it. What I do, and sometimes people aren't really, liking this idea, but I get a chemical weed killer, and if this was the thistle, and I have done this in my garden, I go right up to the thistle plant and just squeeze a little bit right onto the stem. And wherever there's thistle, I do that. It's not a big full spray. It's probably not even a tablespoon of spray throughout the thistle that pops up. And I just spray the stem. The poison goes into the thistle through the roots, and it wipes out the entire problem. I've tried other ways. The more you pick it, the more it comes. It's just, it can't be done. Maybe it can be done, but I'm not digging down and pulling up all the roots. I don't have time for that. But just very targeting, just a very light spray right at the base of the thistle will kill it out and control it. So the James's method for using clay, and I forget, for whatever reason, forget the name of the clay he uses. He has dwarf trees, and he does a great job, and he gets beautiful fruit. But if you get larger trees, it's really hard to cast the clay on there or spray it on there. So you just want to match what you use, and I would recommend his channel and checking out the fruit trees. You have to be able to cover and manage the trees. Even if you select that, again, you want to stay up on the routine. Question, what would be the best way to overwinter potted canes, raspberry cultivars? I'm in 6A, Southern Ontario. I have various canes. Currently have stored on a sheltered porch. Well, raspberry canes, I'm in 7, so 6 is pretty similar, are very hardy. And as long as the variety that you bought can survive your winters, they should be fine. They're going to go dormant and they'll come back. Imagine you're growing them in the pots and that's how you grow them. If you can get them to a place that stays a bit warmer, not so freezing, that's the best. But, there's not much you can do. If they're in a pot, they're in a pot. Some people move them into, you know, move them to the southern side of their property where they'll warm up more with the southern sun. But they should be hardy enough to survive in the pots as you wish. Some people do things like put Christmas lights, the old incandescent, not the LEDs, around the pots to warm them a little bit, but that's not going to make a lot of a difference. I would just kind of roll the dice. If these are plants that are going to be put into the ground, you can put them in the ground now and let them go. All right, let me talk real quick about last minute compost bins. And sometimes when I say that, people think, okay, he's going to explain how to get compost started. Well, I've done a lot of talks on that. I have a lot of videos on that. And what I want to impress upon today is the biggest barrier, aside from space and resources. I mean, if you don't have the space and you don't have grass or trees, there's not a lot you can do. But when you do have that, the biggest barrier for people creating compost is they actually don't build the compost bin. So that's what I kind of want to recommend now, real quick, 30 seconds. In a 4-foot, 5-foot space, put in 4 posts. I use T-posts that are at least, 6 feet tall, and just put them in the ground. 4-foot by 4-foot square, 5-foot by 5-foot square. Get any fencing wire that's 4 feet wide. Wrap one post, bring it all the way around, and then I just cut the fencing wire and I just, press it into the other post. That keeps everything contained. And you don't necessarily need a pen if you don't have a lot of wind, but if you're going to be piling leaves, the wind blows it away here in Maryland. So I recommend the bin. Get the bin built now, because come next year, you're going to have plenty of materials to start throwing in there. And even though compost may be 12 months away or 24 months away, that's not going to happen if you don't get started. Sometimes we think, oh, it's not going to be here for another year, I'll just wait, or it takes 2 years. That's common. I mean, that's kind of what we do, and I've done that. Try and get that compost bin built wherever you have space. 4 feet by 4 foot, or 4 foot by 4 foot square, 5 foot by 5 foot square, 4 foot fencing wire around it. If you have leaves now or any materials, just start throwing it into there and let it be. As you fill it up, soak it down. The second issue people have, besides not getting started with compost, is they don't give it enough moisture. Fungi, molds, and microbes need moisture to decompose the organic matter. So you don't want to put a top on it. You don't want to keep rain off of it. You want to make sure that everything is soaked through and just let it sit there. You will very quickly get compost, even though a year seems out of, a long time away, or 2 years seems a long time away. I have several compost pins. So you set one up now, you get it filled, maybe you build a second one, you fill that. Eventually, 2 years down the line, you're in a rhythm where one bin is ready of great compost, the other one is getting filled, and now you have a great way to save money. But more importantly, that is what your garden needs to thrive. They're always going to produce, but if you really want it to thrive, organic matter in the soil. And then I'll talk a little bit shortly about using a trash can for smaller spaces. All right, let me see what other questions we have. Will I post an insect? This is from Tiny, also a perk member. Will I post an insect timeline for us in your area? I don't know. I just wrote a blog article yesterday on the basics for seed starting. Let me put that in here. You can find it on the Rustic Garden blog. I'm going to answer your question in a second. So that's my blog. I've had it for a year. I didn't really stay up on it for 2026. And those of you that have been watching me for a while, I always try and get this darn blog going, but get busy in the garden and making videos. But this year I'm trying harder. So there is a brief article on there on just the basics right now that you need for seed starting that I did a couple days ago. If you want to check that out, therustedgardenblog.com. And in there, I hope to put some information on insects. Maybe I will drop in my timeline. But realistically, I know that you're a perk member. When we're doing the Q&As for, the perk membership 4 or 5 times a month, just ask, what fungal issues or what pests are coming, and we'll talk about it then. That'll probably be the easiest way. Yeah, the kale and clay or surround product that James uses for his fruit trees is effective and it works. You just, you're not going to be able to get that. You can get it in spray form. I'm not sure how effective it is as a spray, but you can get it in a spray form. But it's harder to reach those 10 and 12 foot and 14-foot trees. Girl foliage. Which herbs are best thinned to a single plant? I want to start thyme, oregano indoors to be grown in pots next year. So I've done experiments where I've just done a single oregano plant, seed, and it's a beautiful plant. I mean, it gets big, it starts spreading out, and it looks great. I like to put in 6 or 8 seeds through the entire starting cell. I don't have one here. And then when they get growing, I break them. And then I put them into a pot, they grow some more, I break them again. This way, I'm getting up to 4 plugs of oregano from one planting. So oregano, I would do 6 or 8 seeds and divide it up that way. The whole key to it is, if you have a lot of seeds in there, if it's getting, big, is to pot it up. Just make sure the roots can keep growing and you would be fine. But for oregano and thyme, I do an overseeding method and I divide. Herbs that are best as a single plant are lavender, rosemary, sage, are best indoors, I think, as a single plant. The other plants, basil, I'm doing 2 or 3 seeds and I put that plug out to my garden. Same thing with cilantro. Dill, I like doing 1 plant. Hopefully that helps. Question, have you noticed different insects and pest pressure in the last several years, potentially related to warmer, dry winters? Yes, I've noticed that. When last year I had less insect pressure and we had a period of time, and all my rosemary varieties got killed off, by the way, because they're like 50-50 if they make it here in Maryland Zone 7. But we had freezing temperatures in the single digits for at least a couple weeks in January. And I think that reduced the potato beetle in my area and the cucumber beetle. Prior to that, milder winters, I had infestations like crazy. So the winters and more importantly, the prolonged freezes of the ground do impact, I think, the insects. All right, where are we at? And I'm going to stay until about 11:45. If you are interested in this format, you like it, perk memberships, they're $3.99 a month. I do this format 4 or 5 times a month and a couple other things, and you'll get a list of when when the events are. You'll get, if you've got YouTube on, you'll get reminders of when I'm doing the perk membership live events. And I stay on for those for about an hour and answer questions. I'll stay on for about 45 minutes for this public one. I'm trying to find the questions here. Questions from Soapbox. I put leaves in black plastic bags with holes in them. Will they mold and provide me something I can use? Let's do a redo. I put leaves in a black plastic bag with holes in them. Will they mold and provide me with something I can use? They certainly will. You want to have holes in the bottom, and it's potential, worms will crawl up into there. If you're doing like leaves, make sure it's moist, but the molds and the fungi will take over and it will break things down, and you just leave the bag there. Again, it should stay moist. If you're doing something like grass and you're putting straight grass clippings into a bag and closing it, it's way too much nitrogen. You know what a bag of grass smells like, 24 hours later. But yes, you can use the bag method with holes in the bottom. You never want water filling up the bag and sitting in there. It's going to cause problems. The other method, very similar to what you said, so it's a nice segue, is you can use any trash can. Any trash can that sits on the bottom. Metal or plastic, I use metal. Drill holes in the bottom, maybe the size of your thumb, something a good size, good drainage, but it'll be contacting the ground. Worms can climb up into there. I fill trash cans full of leaves. I just let them break down, and I did a lot of videos this year just showing the beautiful leaf mold that came out of that. And trash cans are a nice way to do it. It's small, great for containers. Put up several trash cans, fill them with leaves, you're good to go. Again, moisture, drainage, those leaves in the bag, they're going to get a fungus or molds, good stuff, nothing problematic, and it's going to break them down. Here's a question. Make sure you put question there so I see it before your question. But this one says, when it comes to rabbit, rodents, and even birds, are you forced to corral your garden with a metal mesh to protect everything? I'm not, but I have to protect it from rabbits. Rabbits will get in and chew things down. So my main garden has fencing that rabbits can't get through. I also have my fencing comes to the ground. Let's do it this way. Let's just say, to the ground. And when it hits the ground, in front of it, I put boards down so that a rodent can't dig down and then under the fence. So I do have protection for that. I needed one more hand to do what I wanted to do. That's for rabbits. Deer, a deer has been jumping into my garden for the first time in 6 years and causing some trouble. 4-foot fence is not tall enough for deer, but depending on how you set it up, you can really decrease the amount of deer getting in there. We do have groundhogs. They need to be protected from my garden. But it's all going to depend, to answer your question, where you live. Birds you can't do anything about. I mean, they're going to fly in. You can build cages. I have bird feeders. I have bird houses. I have all kinds of birds. They actually don't do much damage to my garden. In fact, I think they help it by, eating bad insects and stuff like that. And then the mass amounts of birds, they kind of balance each other out from the ones that might steal my blackberries. There's other ones that are more territorial and keep them away from the blackberries because there's bird nests there, bird houses there. So you probably are going to have to protect them from rabbits and groundhogs if you have it. If you have deer, you're going to need something. But, it really just depends where you live. I don't get any rodents. People ask me, I might get, we have field mice, but we also have hawks. I don't have moles or voles. I had mole problem once. I had to kill them and get rid of them. They were all over my lawn. But we have black snakes and we have hawks, and they tend to take care of a lot of the rodents. Yeah, the timeline, the insect timeline, yeah, for the perk members asking that, yeah, just please, let's bring it up as a question each month of what's coming around the corner. All right, let me find some more questions. And we're going to go to another 15 minutes or so. How often should I water the garlic and onions that I recently planted? So that's the hardest question I always say to answer is watering. And I'm assuming you put yours outside. If it's been cold and there's some rain, once every 10 days or so, you really don't have to do much. Garlic, you put it into the ground, water it in, you can actually probably just walk away and not even worry about it. Onions, if you're putting the seeds in, which I'm guessing you're doing, or maybe you're putting the seeds in earlier, the bulbs in early, you're not trying to get them to grow a whole lot. They might sit dormant because the temperatures are cold. But again, they're going to send roots down and they're going to have enough moisture. So, if you're really worried about the onions, maybe every 7 to 10 days, lightly water them, but I think they'll be fine. One rain barrel is completely empty while the other is 80% empty. Will a freeze hurt that one if it's not empty? Well, it depends. The rain barrel is pretty strong. And as long as when water freezes, it expands. So as long as it can push the water and ice upward, it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, technically, I'd probably say check with the manufacturer and see what they recommend. But, wherever the drain is or the spigot or whatever, I would make sure there's no water sitting in the hose line, because when that expands, that can cause issues. But in a barrel, it should freeze and the expansion of the frozen water should go upward. So I think the barrel itself would be fine. I mean, but I'm not an expert, but I wouldn't worry about that. That's probably a common problem. In places that are really using rain barrels, wouldn't necessarily want to have to empty all the water in times of freezing. Question: what herbs and superhots are you starting in December and January, and would you consider a paid one-on-one video consultation for perk members? I'm really struggling with soil and compost starting. So to answer the question for a one-on-one, I'm not doing a paid version of that now. I just actually don't know what to charge. I don't want to charge too much. If I start doing that, it does take up time into other things I'm doing. And like when I'm mostly available is December and January, and then I'm really busy. So I'm not doing that now. I know we've talked about it in the perk membership Q&As. I mean, we could try and talk more, but no to that one. For December and January, late December, beginning of January, I always do lavender and rosemary. Those are the main herbs. Other stuff maybe later in January: oregano, thyme, sage, parsley. I'll get started, but you have more time for your herbs, really. Except for lavender and rosemary, grows slowly and germinates slowly. So I like to start them late December, beginning of January. Super hots, I wouldn't really start those February, March, April. I mean, you don't really have to start them till, February 1st. Super hot peppers tend to grow or germinate more slowly, but, February 1st is fine. The whole key for these peppers is getting them out into really warm soil. So even if you get this really big super hot and you put it out into my garden April 15th and there's no frost, it's not going to do anything until that soil temperature really warms up. So you're really thinking super hots getting into the ground, you can put them in May 1st, but end of May, they really like the heat that's starting to come. So you go May, June, let me do this right. May, April, March, go backwards 12 weeks. And sometimes in February, let them grow them to a nice size, get them into the soil. End of May, it's warm, they take off. One of the things that, I've sort of discovered over the last 5-7 years is it's not how tall your transplants are. That really doesn't matter at all. It's how big of a nice, well-developed root system you have, and then getting that plant into the right soil temperature really defines how quickly it takes off and grows, and it makes a big difference. Dave, something was eating the foliage of my green bean plants this summer. They were 6 inches high and being eaten from the top down. I mean, that's usually a rabbit or some sort of animal like that. Insects tend to go to the leaves, and you see chew marks and leaves in on different leaves. But if it's like the top stem chewed down, that's usually a rabbit. The best thing for that is to just make a little dome out of chicken wire, put it over your green beans so that it's, maybe a foot tall, and let it grow up through there. It won't impact how it grows, but it keeps rabbits and animals away. If you do that and then you still have something coming, I mean, I guess theoretically it could be, a big slug or something like that. But without really seeing it, it's hard for me to, to know what it was. So it looks like a lot of people are saying empty the rain barrels. So if it's not a problem, Serena, I would just follow other people's advice and empty it. 1 out of 8 cracked for somebody who I guess left water in there. Thank you for that. If you don't need the water and you're not worried about it, I would drain them. I mean, personally, for me, I would probably leave the water in there and just roll with it. Question from Big Will. I know for a fact a mouse or vole is tunneled in my mature compost. Should I worry about it or go ahead and evict it now? So if you know for sure that you have something tunneled into your compost, it's probably going to want to nest, and that means you're going to have more mice and more voles. So I would try and get rid of it now. One of the things with compost, if you're using a tarp or something over it, really once a week, you want to, every 10 days, disturb it and make sure stuff isn't living in there, because it creates a great environment for moles and voles and mice. Well, maybe not moles, but for voles and mice to kind of live in there. Question. I'm drying parsley in brown paper bags. It's turning yellow as it dries. What am I doing wrong? Thanks. I have not dried parsley before. I've dried thyme and oregano the way you're describing. And I usually dry mine. I tie, I get a big thing of oregano, even basil, I've done it. Clump it together, tie it really tightly, and I hang it in my house and I let it dry. In a bag, I mean, it's possible that as it's drying, it's kind of got a lot of moisture in there and it's causing an issue. So I only do really the hanging drying method, in the house where there's a lot of air circulation. But I don't know the answer to that. If anyone else can help this person out with that question, that would be great. The other thing to do is if you dry it in an oven at 170 degrees or less, just lay it flat onto, cookie sheets or something. You don't really want to get past 170 degrees Fahrenheit because then it dries out all the oils. But a low heat, crack the oven door if you need to, it will dry quickly and the yellowing would not happen that way. What's your take on weed barrier material? I've heard 50-50 good and bad, meaning it breaks down over time. So I used weed barrier around my blueberry plants and I hate it. It actually doesn't work in the long term. And then you just get this plastic that lives under there, or the barrier that lives under there. So when you put down weed barrier, you are stopping things from germinating, getting through. New seeds fall, and the weed barrier usually has holes in it because you need the water to kind of seep into your garden. New seeds that land on that weed barrier, especially if you have mulch and that mulch breaks down over time, those seeds germinate. A root usually can find its way through the weed barrier, and now you have new seeds on top, growing on top of that. So I don't find it very effective. I would rather just put down 2 or 3 layers of cardboard, mulch on top, kills anything that's wanting to come up, and then I just manage it after that. I don't like the weed barrier. If you are trying to suppress weed growth, anything that is porous is going to support seeds on top of it. So, plastic sheets that aren't porous around or on your ground would work if that's okay with you. But I just don't like it. I'm just trying to figure out where I am here. I'm in Alabama and temperatures sometimes go down to 0. Usually plant spring onions. Will they survive if I plant them now? So it's a mixed bag. I plant onion seeds now, or I have, and they just don't do well. And I'm in zone 7, and we get, temperatures usually stay in the 20s, sometimes get into the teens. I don't like it. I would rather just plant them in, February or March or something like that and take it from there. I'm not sure what the benefit is. I grow my onions in a container like this. This says red onions. This is from last year, 1.5. Fill it full of soil. I put the whole pack of seeds in here. Let them grow, I don't know, 7 weeks, 8 weeks till they get to size. Get them outside, acclimated to the temperature and sun for a week. And then I just dump this out, break them up, and then I put the individuals into the ground, and it works really well. I would rather do this because I can control their growth. I get 50, 60, 70 plants in here. The roots are like wires. They can, really entangle. You can pull them apart. They're almost indestructible. And then that's what I plant into my garden. Other people have done the seeding method now, and it works for them, The only way to know, 0 might be kind of tough, but the seeds themselves can last. And onions can freeze really solidly and still be okay, the seedlings and stuff. You can always experiment, but if unless you have to do it that way, I prefer the method I just showed you. All right, give me a second. I'm selling my super hots now, and I want to get an early harvest. So any suggestions on getting them to produce early would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for all your advice. It's really hard to get the super hots to produce early because it's a function of soil warmth. Now, you could do things like put down black plastic where you're growing, cut out a hole, you put in your super hot, the sun hits the plastic, warms the soil. That's going to accelerate growth. That's, a technique people use. You could try that. It's not going to be really getting them out and growing early. It's going to be that warmth. So, I would maybe try the black plastic trick and see if that helps. Question: do onion seeds need cold stratification to germinate? They do not. Hands down from Elaine, 4 to 6 weeks indoors is the best. I learned that from, Gary years ago. I'll never start onions outdoor again. The reason I like that, I thought maybe you were just doing it not on my advice, is that it's really effective. They grow really nicely indoors. You don't need to stratify them indoors. They don't need a cold period. Get them growing. I used to grow them longer, like 12 weeks, but you don't have to do that. It's really, that 6, 7 weeks, an hour of or a week of acclimation outdoors and get them into the ground. It works really, really well. And you can control the onion growth in just a little container like that. That keeps them a little bit smaller. If you used a bigger container, they're going to be bigger and stronger. So you could experiment. Question: I've been getting an app that's plant related. I've been getting an app that's plant related just the other day. It looks like your camera and app determine what to do, take care of, or get rid of weeds. I'm not familiar with that. It could be helpful, I'm not sure, you would need a camera to tell you maybe just when to get rid of weeds, but a camera maybe identifying issues on the leaves would be wonderful. So, there's probably benefit in that. All right. If I missed your question, please throw it out there. We're at 11:45, so I am going to wrap up. Just real quick, the whole point about the last minute compost bin was not filling it with organic matter. It's really trying to get that bin set up. So if you have a chance, get that set up now. If you have leaves left over or organic matter, certainly throw it in there. If you don't have the space for a full-size bin, a trash can with holes cut in the bottom so that the bottom of the can contacts the ground so worms can move in works really well. I've done both methods. Compost makes a huge difference in the growth of your garden plants. So the more you can make, the better. And again, the biggest barrier sometimes is just getting that bin set up. Once it's set up, it's real easy to keep filling it full of materials. All right, so there is no garden grounds for the fourth Thursday this month because of the holiday. We'll be back on track in January. Every second and fourth Thursday, 11 a.m., I do the garden grounds. If you're interested in perk memberships, it's $3.99 a month. I do this format 4 or 5 times a month, plus some other things. It's a smaller group. I stay on for an hour, and we just talk about vegetable gardening, and I will gladly answer your questions. All right, I will see all you guys next time. Have a great holiday and a wonderful new year. And seed starting is going to start January.